Who really had the capability to commit this type of crime? What exactly led law enforcement to Bryan Kohberger? And when did law enforcement have Bryan Kohberger on their radar? Where were Ethan and Xana between 9 p.m. and 1:45 a.m. on the night that these crimes occurred? And why? Why would somebody take the lives of 4 college students? And last but not least, how? How would one person be able to take the lives of 4 victims with a sharp-edged blade in less than 10 minutes? Hey everyone, it's Lucky with Unfiltered Lucky. And today I want to talk a little bit about the who's, the what's, the when, the where, the why, and the how's of the Idaho 4 crimes. Now, before we get into this video, I do want to talk about these 400 witnesses that Ann Taylor mentioned in the last court hearing. 400. Now, anytime you throw out a number like 400 witnesses, of course, there's going to be questions. Where are these 400 witnesses coming from? I believe these witnesses are coming from the fraternity houses, the sorority houses, as well as anyone who may have been at the party Friday night, the night before these crimes occurred at the King Roadhouse. Now, it's been stated that Dylan and Bethany contacted people outside of the house the morning of these crimes. Now, who did they contact? They contacted people at the fraternity houses. They contacted people at the sorority houses. So these organizations became involved. I'm sure that rumors were running rampant all across that campus, and especially in the fraternities and the sororities. So these people would have important information that other people wouldn't have after they locked down the crime scene. So there probably are hundreds of people walking around out there with important information that could be useful to the defense. Now, we know that these organizations are very well protected by legal representation. So the people in these fraternities and in these sororities aren't talking. They haven't said anything. So it's possible that Ann Taylor needs to call these people as witnesses in order to get this information. So that's just a quick rundown of my thoughts about these 400 witnesses that Ann Taylor mentioned in the last court hearing. But let's get into the video. Let's talk about the who, the what, the when, the why, the where, and the hows of these Idaho 4 crimes. Now, who would have the capability to commit these types of crimes? In my opinion, it's going to be someone who's obviously powerful, someone who's athletic, somebody who could overpower these victims. Not just one victim, not just 2 victims, but somebody who had the strength to overpower 4 victims. This would be somebody who's lacking in compassion, and also somebody who could definitely be under the influence of substances. This would be someone who's experienced and knowledgeable about weapons, someone who's comfortable using a sharp-edged blade on flesh, and someone who's not squeamish around body fluids. Maybe a hunter. In my opinion, I do believe that this would be someone who knew the roommates who lived in this house. This would also, in my opinion, be someone who's familiar with this house. Whoever committed these crimes, in my opinion, was very angry. Like, very angry. Now, either they were very angry, or it was someone who was sending a message. Someone who committed these crimes and took these victims' lives in a very brutal manner in order to display dominance. So either they were very angry, or they were sending a message, or possibly both. Now, what exactly led law enforcement to Bryan Kohberger? Did investigators really piece together a bunch of video of Bryan Kohberger driving his white Hyundai around the King Roadhouse? Think about this. On November 25th, 2 Washington State University officers find Bryan Kohberger's car. This is when they're on to Bryan Kohberger and his white Hyundai. Now remember, this is November 25th. So 2 weeks later, law enforcement puts out a be on the lookout for a 2011 to 2013 white Hyundai Elantra. This is all included in the Exhibit A to the PCA about how these 2 officers from Washington State University found Bryan Kohberger's white Hyundai Elantra. Now, that happened on November 25th. So why, almost 2 weeks later, is law enforcement asking for the public's help to find this white Hyundai Elantra? They've already found it. Now, Chief Fry stated that they were following 22,000 leads about white Hyundai Elantras. Why? Why were they still following 22,000 leads about white Hyundai Elantras when they had found the white Hyundai Elantra that they were looking for 2 weeks earlier? It just doesn't make sense that they were already set on Bryan Kohberger's car, but yet they put out a be on the lookout for this white Hyundai Elantra that they had already found. And they obviously found it without any leads. So these 22,000 white Hyundai Elantras that they received leads about were all for nothing, because they didn't even use these leads to find this car, because they had already found this car 2 weeks earlier. So what really led law enforcement to Bryan Kohberger? Because it wasn't any of these 22,000 leads. What was so evident to law enforcement that this was their suspect that they would follow him across country 2,500 miles to his parents' house in order to arrest him? That's strange. You know, how long were they on to Bryan Kohberger? It's going to lead us to when. When was law enforcement on to Bryan Kohberger exactly? They were obviously on to Bryan Kohberger by November 25th. And I believe that they were on to Bryan Kohberger a lot sooner than that. I mean, were these 2 WSU officers just randomly looking for white Hyundais and just happened to stumble across Bryan Kohberger's? Or were they looking for Bryan Kohberger's car? Did they have their sights on Bryan Kohberger right after these crimes were committed? Now let's talk about the where. This is something that has always bothered me because I believe that it's rather important. Where were Ethan and Xana between 9 p.m. and 1:45 a.m. on the morning that these crimes occurred. Law enforcement was desperately seeking information, looking for the whereabouts of Ethan and Xana between 9 and 1:45. Now, this is weeks after these crimes occurred that law enforcement is still asking the public for information about the whereabouts of Ethan and Xana that night. They're asking the public if anyone gave them a ride or who they were with between 9 and 1:45. Now, it would seem as though Bethany would have told law enforcement when she was questioned right after these crimes occurred that she saw Ethan and Xana at the Sigma Chi party between 9 and 1:45. Because when the PCA comes out, that's what it's stated as, that Bethany confirms that Ethan and Xana were at the Sigma Chi house between 9 and 1:45. Now, Bethany confirms this, but Bethany wasn't even at the Sigma Chi house during those times. So how was she able to confirm that Ethan and Xana were at this fraternity party between 9 and 1:45? It's just my opinion, but I don't believe that Ethan and Xana were at the fraternity party all night. And I don't think that law enforcement really believes that either. Now, why? Why would somebody do this? Why would somebody take the lives of 4 young college students? Law enforcement believes that at least one individual in this house was the target. Now, what could one of these roommates have done to cause someone to want to brutally take their life? Not only brutally take their life, but be willing to go through 3 other people just to get to them. What could one of these roommates have done that would cause somebody to want to take that type of vengeance against them? Law enforcement does believe that at least one of these roommates was targeted, which would mean that somebody from the outside of this house had it out for specifically one of these roommates. Somebody was that angry with one of these roommates that they were willing to take the lives of 4 people just to get to this one roommate. So why? Why would somebody be that intent on getting to this roommate and taking their life in a very brutal manner? What could this roommate have done that would cause this? Was it only one of these roommates who was the target? It's very possible that there could have been multiple targets. It's also possible that every single one of these victims was a target. Last but certainly not least, let's talk about the how. How could one individual take the lives of 4 victims with a sharp-edged blade on 2 separate levels of this house in less than 10 minutes? Do I think that this crime could have been committed by one person with a sharp-edged blade in less than 10 minutes? Yeah, I do. I believe that someone with the experience and the know-how using this weapon, as well as knowledge of the victims and knowledge of the layout of this King Roadhouse, could have pulled this crime off in less than 10 minutes. But I don't think that it would be easy. As I've said before, in my opinion, in order for one individual to commit these crimes in the timeline that law enforcement believes that they did, I feel like the stars would basically have to align and everything would have to fall into place in order for this to happen. So is that how one person was able to commit these crimes? Because everything just fell into place. Kaylee and Ethan happened to be at the house that night. But it was a Saturday night, and nobody was partying at the house. These roommates were just quietly in their bedrooms. Did it just happen to fall into place that one of the doors was left unlocked? Did it also just happen to fall into place that these two roommates, Dylan and Bethany, just decided not to call 911 for 8 hours? Like I said, there would have had to be a lot that fell into place for Bryan Kohberger if he truly is the one who committed these crimes. Thanks for watching my video, and please stay tuned for my next video. I really appreciate y'all hanging out with me today. And if you liked my video, please hit the like button and subscribe to my channel. I really do appreciate it. We'll see you next time.